I thought a good video to do would be about the influence that He-Man had in 1980s culture and how He-Man probably inspired a lot of young children at that time to later get into lifting weights and even become bodybuilders. Because over the weekend I rented and watched the brand new documentary that just came out, Lee Priest versus Bodybuilding, and I rented it on YouTube. And I highly suggest checking this one out, especially if you're a fan of Lee Priest or you just like bodybuilding in general. But there's some very interesting information on Lee's early life and bodybuilding career. And one thing that grabbed my attention was the fact that Lee mentioned that once he saw the He-Man cartoon, it made him want to start training to get that kind of physique. And Lee, as a child, he was into taking karate classes, but once he saw He-Man, it really made him want to get into bodybuilding. And I also remember that Rich Piana had said something similar in one of the Generation Iron documentaries, that He-Man action figures he used to play with were a type of bodybuilding inspiration. And I can say in my own experience, I was a He-Man fan as a very young child and had quite a few of the He-Man action figures. And among young boys in the 1980s, the He-Man action figures and accessories were the hottest selling toys during this time frame for males. And as I mentioned in my last video on arm wrestling, the 1980s were really the last great decade as far as promoting masculinity. And evidence of this was seen in the culture through everything from pro wrestling to action movies, superheroes, and you also had the action figures that all had very muscular physiques. Even the bad guys in the He-Man line, they all had physiques like Mr. Olympia. And masculinity being represented through muscle mass is really nothing new. Since muscle mass is a key sign of high testosterone in men, you had Samson of the Bible. The statues of the ancient Greeks were very muscular, and Heaven's Mr. Olympia, Saint Sebastian. And the 80s saw this really, as I said, the He-Man action figure line is a great example, and I believe this planted a seed early on, especially for young boys growing up during this time frame. And I think in my case, and probably the case of many others, it would provide that mindset to try to acquire a heroic physique and to try to strive for that in the gym. Dolph Lundgren, who is a physical culture icon in his own right, he's best known for his role of Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, but he would go on to bring He-Man to life on the big screen in the 1987 canon film Masters of the Universe. And I remember reading an article on his training for that role, and he was praising the sword training he participated in as a great workout, especially for building up his upper body. And He-Man was so big in 80s culture that there was even a live action show that toured the US and Canada, and it ran from 1982 to 1986. And this predated the Dolph Lundgren film. And the first live action He-Man was portrayed by a bodybuilder by the name Larry Opiela. And Larry signed thousands of photos for kids across America as he toured from city to city with this show. And as you can see, He-Man was a really big influence in the lives of young boys during this time. So it really can be said that He-Man is probably often overlooked as a bodybuilding influence, but he was just so big in the culture that it was bound to plant that seed in the head of young children who would later go on to take up weightlifting and bodybuilding. Unfortunately, in recent years, it looks as if Larry Opiela has fallen on hard times due to age and injuries. I know back in 2017, he was online. He was trying to raise money to keep his house so he wouldn't end up homeless. And hopefully everything turned out for him okay. I'm not aware of his current situation, but hopefully he's doing well, as he is a really big cultural icon, and from the standpoint of being associated with He-Man and the relation to bodybuilding. And I think it also teaches a lesson, as happens in life, nothing is really guaranteed, and the moments we're doing great and that we're on top, we shouldn't take it for granted, because it's all fleeting, and good times and success can be taken away at any time. Anyway, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the history lesson and the He-Man connection with bodybuilding. And I do really suggest checking out the new Lee Priest documentary. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for future content. Thank you.